Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a really granular look at a company that I think embodies the modern, hyper-aggressive trajectory of the American energy sector.
Right.
We are diving deep into Diamondback Energy, an entity that, in a remarkably short period, has gone from a regional startup to, well, to a Fortune 500 powerhouse.
The source material you sent over is fascinating. It covers everything from their earliest, small acreage acquisitions to this multi-billion-dollar balance sheet they have now.
And the lawsuits.
And the high-stakes lawsuits, yes. It tells a story of pure velocity.
Hmm.
So for you listening, this deep dive is really a shortcut to understanding the mechanics of rapid corporate consolidation.
And all centered on one specific location.
One single location, the Permian Basin.
Exactly. Our mission today is pretty clear. We need to extract the critical financial data, sure, but we also need to understand the strategic growth moves that powered their rise.
And then connect that to the recent high-profile controversies that are now popping up. The environmental issues, the legal challenges.
It's just not enough to list the facts. We need to understand the significance. What does it mean to become this dominant, this quickly, in such a critical industry?
Well, when we talk about Diamondback Energy, we are talking about a strategic machine. It was built for one purpose: to exploit the unique geology of West Texas.
Every single decision points to that.
Every single one. From their ticker symbol, which is brilliant, to their multi-billion-dollar mergers, it all points toward a calculated, aggressive strategy of control. So let's see how they built that machine.
Okay, let's unpack this core identity. And I think we have to start with geography because it is just so fundamental to who they are.
With everything.
Diamondback Energy, Inc. is squarely in the petroleum industry. Their focus is hydrocarbon exploration, and they do that primarily through the very complex process of shale drilling.
And their headquarters location, Midland, Texas.
Yeah.
That's not just a footnote on a report.
No.
So many other major energy companies have their big executive offices in Houston or Dallas, the financial hubs.
Right, the glass towers.
Exactly. Diamondback is headquartered in Midland. That is the geographical and, I'd argue, the psychological heart of the Permian Basin.
So what does that signal to you, being right there in the thick of it?
It emphasizes their operational focus. Their decisions are being made right where the drilling rigs are. It ensures this, inherent connection between the corporate strategy and the geological reality on the ground.
That grounding in the field is really interesting. I imagine it streamlines the pipeline from, say, a geological discovery to an executive decision. There's no disconnect.
It has to. But let's look at how their market presence evolved from that grounding. This is a public company trading on the NASDAQ.
Under the instantly recognizable symbol FAANG.
FANG. It's so strategically brilliant, and we're definitely going to dedicate a whole section to what that means.
Me too.
But it's financial standing. I mean, it goes so far beyond just a catchy ticker. By 2024, Diamondback was so large, so central to the U.S. market, that it became a component of both the NASDAQ 100
And the S&P 500.
and the S&P 500.
That inclusion in those elite indices is hugely telling. It's not just an honor badge, is it? I mean, there are tangible financial implications.
Oh, absolutely. It's a game changer. When a company achieves S&P 500 status, it basically forces massive passive investment.
Explain that. What do you mean by forces?
Well, think about every major exchange-traded fund, an ETF or a mutual fund that tracks the U.S. market. The ones your retirement account is probably invested in.
Right.
The moment Diamondback is added to the S&P 500, all of those funds must purchase Diamondback stock to maintain parity with the index they're tracking.
So it creates this massive automatic buyer for their shares.
A massive, automatic, and price-insensitive buyer. It provides immense liquidity and a stable, high baseline valuation for the stock. And, as we'll see later, that's absolutely essential when you plan to use that very stock as currency for multi-billion-dollar mergers.
That makes perfect sense, and the rankings just solidify that scale. In 2024, they were ranked 383rd on the Fortune 500.
And 471st on the Forbes Global 2000.
So to be nearly 400th on the Fortune 500, I mean, that's a list that includes every major retailer, every manufacturer, all the tech giants. It just demonstrates the sheer financial weight of even an independent U.S. oil and gas producer.
Indeed. And to really understand that gravitational pull, we have to dive into the financial data for 2024. This isn't just theory, right? This is the reality of their massive scale.
Okay, let's start with the balance sheet. It's colossal. Diamondback reported total assets of, get this, US $67.29 billion. dollars.
67 billion. That's knocking on the door of $70 billion in physical assets. It's staggering.
So what are those assets primarily? Is it just cash in the bank?
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
Those are the physical wells, thousands of them, the pipelines, the processing facilities, and crucially, the value of millions of acres of leased land.
The rights to the minerals underground.
Exactly. All of it underpinning their ability to generate cash flow for decades to come.
And if you look at the other side of that, their total equity stood at US $37.74 billion. dollars.
Right. And the difference there between the assets and the equity, that largely reflects the debt they used to finance that massive acquisition campaign we've been talking about. But the sheer volume of assets is the key.
We see that cash generation reflected so clearly in their operational results. For 2024, their revenue hit US $11.07 billion. dollars.
11 billion in revenue. But here's what's really revealing about the efficiency of their operation. You have to look at the profitability.
Okay.
Their operating income was US $4.396 billion, and their net income was US $3.338 billion.
Wow.
Just look at that ratio. Their operating income is nearly 40% of their total revenue.
40%. That suggests just extremely tight cost control and, some serious operational optimization.
Especially in a volatile commodity sector, that's a fantastic margin.
It means they're clearly extracting these resources at a very efficient rate, which is vital for funding the next round of capital expenditure and, of course, more M&A activity.
It speaks to the successful execution of high-efficiency drilling programs. They're likely using standardized techniques, things like massive, specialized pad drilling.
What's pad drilling?
It's where they set up one large pad on the surface and then drill multiple horizontal wells out from that single location, like spokes on a wheel. It dramatically reduces surface disruption and cost.
So it's a factory-like system.
Precisely. They've managed to turn the incredibly complex geology of the Permian into a factory-like production system.
Which brings us to a figure that I find genuinely staggering, especially when you put it next to the nearly $70 billion in assets.
Employee count.
Their human scale. They reported just 1,983 employees as of 2024.
Less than 2,000 people managing all that capital. That is the signature of modern shale extraction.
But it's all technological leverage.
100%. I mean, these are not 2,000 roughnecks digging ditches with shovels. These are highly specialized geologists, engineers, data scientists, and M&A experts. They're all operating with immense capital intensity.
The capital per employee must be astronomical.
Just think about the CapEx, the capital expenditure, required to maintain that output. That small workforce is overseeing billions in annual investment, focused entirely on drilling and infrastructure.
And guiding this entire operation is the key leader, Kees van Hoff. He's the chairman and CEO.
And that single leadership role has overseen the strategic implementation of what has to be one of the most aggressive growth campaigns in the modern energy industry, period.
So to sum this up, these figures, the $67 billion in assets, the $3.3 billion in net income, S&P 500 status.
They're the platform. It's a signal to the market. It says, we have the financial war chest, we have the operational efficiency, and we have the political gravity to dominate the Permian.
But to understand how they built this platform, we have to look back. We have to go back to the origins and the identity they established right from the very start. All right, let's rewind the tape. Back to the beginning. Diamondback Energy began its operations in December 2007.
And that timing is it's crucial because it places them right on the precipice of the shale revolution.
Oh.
They were there just before the music started,
The technology for hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling was just about to become commercially viable on a massive scale.
Exactly. And it secured their initial asset base with the acquisition of a mere 4,174 net acres in the Permian Basin.
Which, in the context of their current operation, 4,174 acres sounds like a parking lot.
It's nothing now. It's a rounding error on their balance sheet.
But securing that initial strategically placed acreage before the fracking boom fundamentally changed land valuations forever. That was either a stroke of genius or just incredible luck.
Or a bit of both.
Hmm.
That early acquisition positioned them to benefit from the astronomical appreciation in Permian land value over the next decade.
So they bought the real estate just before the neighborhood got really, really popular.
It was a classic first-mover advantage, even if they weren't the absolute first. They were early enough to acquire that land at a reasonable cost.
And then they could apply all the subsequent breakthroughs in horizontal drilling and multi-stage fracking technology to make those assets exponentially more valuable.
And the next major step in establishing their dominance was, of course, securing the capital they needed to start scaling up.
They executed their initial public offering, the IPO, in October 2012.
And the IPO details give us a really concrete baseline for their trajectory. They issued 12.5 million shares of common stock at $17.50 per share,
$17.50.
listing on NASDAQ. And the key here isn't really the total cash they raised, which was significant. It was the validation.
What do you mean by that?
Going public provided the liquidity and the transparent valuation necessary to participate in the high-stakes mergers and acquisitions market. It turned the company from a private, regional player into a publicly accountable entity with access to the deepest pools of capital in the world.
So that IPO capital was the first major war chest.
The very first one.
It funded the strategic transition from just a drilling operation focused on those initial 4,000 acres.
To an aggressive consolidator.
And this transition was signaled so clearly through their branding, we have to come back to the ticker symbol.
FANE.
FANE. In modern finance, that acronym, it makes everyone think of Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, the big tech companies.
Right, but Diamondback claimed it first, and they tied it back to their original corporate identity.
So what was the signal they were sending to the market with that choice? It had to be intentional.
Oh, completely. The symbol FANG is a direct reference to a snake's tooth.
Which was reinforced by their logo at the time.
Exactly. The company's logo at the time featured a stylized Western Diamondback rattlesnake. And you have to understand, this isn't just aesthetics, it's a mission statement.
A mission statement. So the rattlesnake, it wasn't just a cool drawing, it was a promise of something.
A promise of what they were and what they were going to do. The Western Diamondback is endemic to the Permian region. It grounds them geographically. This is their home turf.
Okay, that makes sense.
But more importantly, the fang represents a tool for rapid, surgical, and decisive action. Their entire strategy, which we're about to detail, is defined by rapid, large-scale acquisition. They strike quickly, they inject capital, and they consolidate resources.
It suggests they are not interested in slow, organic growth.
Not at all. They are built for accelerated market capture.
This analysis of the FANG brand just aligns perfectly with their growth narrative. From that small acreage in 2007, they established this identity, small, regional, but aggressive.
Which culminated in a successful 2012 IPO.
That gave them the financial firepower to finally realize the vision that was inherent in that striking FAN symbol. They were signaling to everyone, we are ready to bite.
And that bite is focused squarely on what's underneath the Permian. The true value created by that IPO was the ability to access and exploit their core reserves.
The engine room of their operation.
Exactly. Which is where we have to turn next.
Okay, so when we evaluate any exploration company, the ultimate metric of its inherent worth isn't just the revenue they make today. It's about what they can pull out of the ground tomorrow.
It all comes down to their reserves, the bank and the ground.
And the mix of products within those reserves. So Diamondback produces and sells 3 main hydrocarbon products: petroleum, which is crude oil,
Right.
natural gas, and natural gas liquids, or NGLs.
And understanding that mix is absolutely critical. It defines their financial resilience and their exposure to different commodity markets.
And we have the exact figures for their proved reserves as of December 31st, 2024.
We do. And proved reserves is the industry gold standard. It means these are quantities that geological and engineering data show could be recovered with a very high degree of confidence.
Usually around 90% certainty.
Right, under current economic and operating conditions.
And that bank account in the earth, it's
Yeah.
immense. They hold 3,557 million barrels of oil equivalent in total estimated proved reserves.
Let's just pause on that. 3.5 billion BOE. That number is difficult to grasp.
It is. The source also gives the energy equivalent, 2.176 times 10 to the 10 gigajoules, which doesn't make it any easier to visualize for me.
No, but what it tells you is that this represents a vast, concentrated pool of wealth and, future energy supply.
So let's focus on the composition, because you said this is the first major financial insight into their strategy.
It is. The breakdown of those 3.557 billion barrels is 49% petroleum or oil,
Okay, almost half.
24% natural gas, and 27% natural gas liquids, NGLs.
That nearly 50-50 split between crude oil on one side and the combined gas and NGLs on the other, that's the key differentiator in their portfolio.
It is. Crude oil, that 49%, that's the high-value, high-visibility product. It drives headlines and shareholder returns when oil prices are strong.
But the other half, the natural gas and, more importantly, as you said, the natural gas liquids component, totaling 51%.
That is their operational sweet spot.
Why?
Well, many exploration companies in the U.S., they produce what's called dry gas, which is mostly just methane, and it's often sold at pretty low margins.
Okay.
But Diamondback's positioning in the Permian means they're producing wet gas. That means it's natural gas that is rich in heavier hydrocarbons.
And those heavier hydrocarbons are the NGLs we mentioned. Propane, butane, ethane.
Exactly. And why are those NGLs so valuable compared to plain old dry gas?
They're feedstock, right, for the chemical industry.
They are critical feedstocks for the massive petrochemical industry. They're used to create plastics, solvents, chemicals, you name it. They're far higher margin products.
So by having 27% of their reserves as NGLs, Diamondback is inherently diversified. They're not just betting on the price of oil or the price of natural gas.
Precisely. If crude oil dips, their strong NGL margins provide a significant financial cushion. It makes their overall cash flow much more resilient than a pure oil producer or a pure dry gas producer.
So their reserve composition positions them not just as an oil producer, they're really a dual-engine company.
That's a great way to put it.
They're providing transportation fuel through crude oil and, at the same time, industrial feedstock through NGLs.
And this reserve mix is absolutely central to understanding their strategy of growth through acquisition, because they are deliberately buying acreage that is rich in both.
They aren't just buying oil reservoirs, they're buying integrated resource streams.
Exactly. Now, if we translate those reserves into daily activity, we get a real-time measure of their impact. Their 2024 production output
Was 598,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day.
almost 600,000 BOE every single day.
That scale of output requires just relentless, continuous capital investment just to maintain those production levels, let alone grow them.
Constant drilling, constant well management, constant infrastructure maintenance. It's a treadmill.
And crucially, that continuous output requires the continuous acquisition of new acreage and new reserves.
Because shale production sees very steep decline rates. A new well can produce a huge amount in its first year, but it drops off very quickly.
So Diamondback has to constantly drill new wells and acquire new land just to replace what they are producing.
And that necessity, that constant need to feed the beast, is the driving force behind the strategic element that truly defines the company.
The aggressive, multi-billion-dollar acquisition spree that transformed the Permian Basin. If that FANG symbol was a mission statement, this section is the execution plan. The company's history from 2017 onward is just a masterclass in market consolidation.
It really is. They used that IPO capital and their subsequent robust cash flows to systematically buy their way to dominance.
And the focus was always on mid-sized, high-quality assets in the Permian.
Always. And the key pattern to watch here as we go through this is the shift in the scale and the currency of these deals.
What do you mean by currency?
Whether they're paying with cash or with their own stock. They start large, but they end colossal. And they move from all-cash deals to deals that are heavily reliant on their high-flying stock.
Okay, let's start the chronology in 2017. In March, they made a major move. They acquired assets from Brigham Resources.
And this was a significant early indication of their ambition. It cost them $2.55 billion.
$2.5 billion. For a company that was only 5 years post-IPO, that's a huge outlay.
It confirmed that Diamondback was willing to immediately leverage its balance sheet to compete for premium acreage. They were often displacing larger, more established players to get these deals done. This deal solidified their initial footprint.
And then they just ramped up the velocity in 2018. In October, they acquired the assets of Ajax Resources.
That was for $1.25 billion.
And look at the pace of integration here. Just 1 month later, November 2018, they closed the acquisition of Energen Corporation.
The rapid succession of those two multi-billion-dollar deals, Ajax and Energen, it demonstrates something really important.
Not just their appetite for buying,
but their operational capability to quickly integrate new assets, new personnel, new drilling programs, all into the Diamondback structure. They were accelerating their market share acquisition exponentially.
Okay, moving forward to 2021, we see a continuation of the strategy, but with that change in currency you mentioned.
Right. They're getting more confident in their own valuation.
In February, they acquired leasehold interest from a company called Guidon Resources, and the structure was $375 million in cash.
Plus 10.68 million shares of their own stock.
So using their stock as a substantial component of the payment, what does that show?
It shows that Diamondback's equity was now liquid and valued enough to be accepted by sellers as a major currency. This is a crucial step in corporate growth, when your stock becomes reliable transaction collateral.
Your ability to do massive deals goes way up.
Dramatically. You're not just limited by the cash in your balance sheet anymore.
And this was immediately followed in March 2021 by the acquisition of QEP Resources, again, completing two major integrations within weeks of each other.
The goal was clearly to eliminate rivals and swallow up contiguous acreage. They wanted to create these highly efficient, large-scale drilling zones that they could operate like a factory.
And that strategic momentum just built and built until it culminated in the truly industry-redefining deal.
September 2024.
Diamondback completed a massive $26 billion merger with Endeavor Energy Resources.
$26 billion with a B.
That is just a staggering figure. That transaction didn't just add acreage, it completely reshaped the competitive landscape of the entire U.S. energy market. What does a merger of that size actually mean?
It creates what the industry now calls an independent supermajor.
Okay.
Endeavor was one of the largest privately held oil and gas companies operating exclusively in the Permian Basin. By acquiring them, Diamondback achieved unparalleled scale and density of assets in one basin.
So they're the undisputed king of the hill in the Permian now, among the independents.
It confirmed them as the dominant player. It puts them in the same regional production league as the integrated giants like ExxonMobil and Chevron.
Wow.
They went from being a challenger, nipping at the heels of the big guys, to setting the pace themselves.
And the buying didn't stop there. Right into 2025, in April, they acquired Double Eagle 4E Holdings.
And while that was smaller than the Endeavor deal, it was still a major transaction.
The structure was $3 billion in cash, plus 6.9 million shares of stock.
So this reiterates that dual strategy. On one hand, swallowing giant rivals like Endeavor. On the other, continuing to snap up these strategic private holdings like Double Eagle.
Why the focus on private companies?
Acquiring private companies often allows for cleaner deals. They're usually focused purely on Permian assets, so you don't have the complexity of inheriting unrelated public company issues or legacy debt from other basins. It's a cleaner transaction.
So this pattern, it's just a textbook example of aggressive, focused growth in a commodity market.
Early cash deals, rapid consolidation, and then it culminates in these colossal stock-backed mergers.
The summary analysis is it's overwhelming. The sheer velocity of growth achieved through this strategic consolidation in one single critical U.S. resource area.
From a 4,174-acre startup
to a $67 billion asset enterprise that's capable of executing a $26 billion merger.
in under 17 years. It's breathtaking.
However, that immense scale and that aggressive pace, particularly within a high-profile region like the Permian, it comes with significant public scrutiny.
And legal friction, which leads us directly to the high-stakes controversies that are now dominating their operating environment.
So when a company achieves this kind of dominance and runs its operations at the velocity that Diamondback does, they're basically operating under a magnifying glass.
Everything they do is scrutinized.
And their success has led to two major fronts of public pushback: environmental practices and allegations of market manipulation.
And these controversies are directly linked to the very success metrics we just discussed.
Yeah.
Their efficiency, their profitability, their aggressive production goals. It's all connected.
Okay, let's start with the first one. The environmental flaring accusation. This really materialized publicly in October 2023.
And the accusation was that Diamondback was a major contributor to the increase of gas flaring in the Permian Basin.
Let's unpack that. What exactly is flaring?
The flaring controversy highlights a critical systemic challenge in the Permian. So we already established that Diamondback produces a lot of high-value natural gas and NGLs alongside their crude oil.
Right, the wet gas.
The wet gas. However, when you're drilling aggressively for that high-margin oil, the associated natural gas is often produced faster than the necessary pipeline infrastructure can be built to gather it and process it.
That infrastructure is called midstream capacity.
Exactly. So you have all this gas coming out of the ground, but you literally have no pipes to put it in.
And when that capacity isn't there, or maybe when transporting the gas is just uneconomical compared to the oil revenue, what's the default industry solution?
The default is flaring. You just burn it off. You burn the excess gas into the atmosphere.
So the accusation that Diamondback is a major contributor suggests that their relentless focus on maximizing oil production outpaced their commitment or their investment in building that gas capture and transport infrastructure.
That's the allegation, and this raises serious environmental concerns. Flaring releases significant greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and unburned methane and other pollutants.
This creates a really difficult strategic dilemma for them, doesn't it? Especially given that nearly 50-50 split in their reserves we talked about.
It does. They have a huge incentive to monetize that gas. It's half their reserves. Yet the operational pressure of aggressive oil drilling leads directly to this environmental flashpoint.
It's the operational cost of velocity.
That's a perfect way to describe it. The speed of their drilling often outstrips the speed of infrastructure development. This controversy is a constant regulatory risk for them. It forces the company to balance maximum oil recovery with these increasing demands for ESG compliance, environmental, social, and governance compliance regarding gas capture.
Okay. Now let's move to the second controversy. This is the antitrust class action lawsuit. And this is perhaps even more financially and legally impactful. It was filed in January 2024.
This is a massive legal action. Diamondback is one of 8 U.S. oil and gas producers named as defendants in this class action lawsuit.
8 of them.
And that scale tells you something. It indicates the scope of the alleged issue is systemic. It's across the biggest independent players in the shale sector.
And the core allegation is severe. It speaks directly to market control. It's an illegal price-fixing scheme
designed to constrain the production of shale oil.
Let's break that down for the listener. What does constrained production actually mean in practice?
It means that rather than allowing the free market to dictate supply, which could potentially drive down prices during times of high output,
Right.
these companies allegedly coordinated their efforts.
How would they even do that?
The lawsuit suggests they may have achieved this by aligning decisions on when to drill new wells, when to complete wells, which is the process of bringing them online, or how much capital to allocate to future drilling programs. The goal, according to the lawsuit, was to artificially limit the amount of shale oil entering the market.
And if supply is artificially limited, the impact on the consumer is immediate.
Absolutely. The lawsuit alleges that this scheme caused drivers across the U.S. to pay more for gasoline than they would have in a truly competitive, unrestrained market.
And that turns this dispute from, some industry technicality into a widespread consumer economic issue. People care about the price of gas.
And the gravity of this is underscored by the current legal status of the case. It's now part of a consolidated multi-district litigation, an MDL, and it's proceeding in New Mexico.
Okay, what does that MDL status mean for the average person, and what does it mean for Diamondback's legal risk?
Multi-district litigation is a centralizing mechanism. So when you have numerous similar lawsuits, in this case, filed by multiple plaintiffs across different jurisdictions, all alleging the same antitrust violations against the same group of defendants,
You bundle them together.
the Judicial Panel on Multi-District Litigation bundles them all together for pretrial proceedings.
And the advantage of that is?
It drastically increases the efficiency of discovery and motions.
Yeah.
But critically, it also concentrates the legal risk for the companies. Instead of fighting dozens of small battles in separate courts, Diamondback and the others now face one massive, coordinated legal effort from the plaintiffs.
And the case is going to be heard by Judge Matthew L. Garcia.
Right. And the consolidation and the involvement of a federal judge specializing in MDL means this case is going to move forward with considerable analytical weight and scrutiny.
And we should stress, as always.
We must. These are accusations laid out in a lawsuit. The defendants are vigorously contesting them.
Of course.
However, the allegations themselves, coordination to restrain supply in a multi-billion-dollar industry, they represent a massive regulatory and legal overhang for Diamondback and the other producers involved.
So the company's growth and its success have placed it squarely in the path of both environmental watchdogs and federal antitrust scrutiny. It's a picture of a company operating at peak financial leverage and peak legal friction. That brings us to the summary of this deep dive into Diamondback Energy. I mean, we've mapped a truly breathtaking journey.
From a 2007 startup with just over 4,000 net acres and an IPO price of $17.50 in 2012.
To an entity with nearly $70 billion in assets and over $3 billion in net income just a decade later. It's incredible.
And the engine of that growth was sheer velocity. It was fueled by an aggressive strategic consolidation focused solely on the Permian Basin.
They successfully leveraged their stock and their debt to execute deal after deal.
Culminating in that massive $26 billion Endeavor Energy Resources merger, which confirmed their status as a true independent supermajor.
So the key takeaway for you listening is understanding that this FANG approach, this rapid acquisition to secure over 3.5 billion barrels of reserves, has fundamentally redefined the geography of U.S. energy production.
It really has. They are a case study in how to consolidate control over a single, highly critical resource area.
But as we just discussed...
Which leads us directly to our final provocative thought for you to consider.
Okay.
Diamondback's reserve profile is nearly balanced, right? 49% crude oil and 51% natural gas and NGLs.
Right.
Given this crucial reliance on both of those product streams, and considering the gravity of this ongoing MDL lawsuit concerning the alleged constraint of oil production.
How might that specific reserve composition shape the regulatory environment for Diamondback in the coming years?
Exactly. I mean, think about it. If regulators force them to strictly adhere to gas capture standards to mitigate flaring, will the economics of their operations shift?
Could it force them to prioritize the higher margin NGLs even more, maybe even over crude?
It could. Conversely, if the antitrust allegations about constraining oil production prove correct, could regulators demand far greater transparency and scrutiny over their daily production and their capital expenditure planning?
Regardless of what the balance of their reserves dictates.
Regardless. The balance of crude versus wet gas, coupled with the outcomes of that consolidated price-fixing litigation, that's what's going to determine Diamondback's future. Will it be defined by continued operational dominance, or are they facing a new era of restrictive oversight in the Permian Basin?
Something to mull over as you watch the energy markets. Thank you for diving deep with us today.
We'll catch you next time.